All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Samurai Brothers. We are on for episode 45 of our podcast, Matthew. And we've had a few things going on, obviously. We're going to be starting off today with talking about the Nagoya Basho is 2025 is now in progress in Japan, and day one is now in the books. So we'll kind of see how the opening day of this Basho went. And then we're going to have One Piece. It's going to be chapter 1154. And Matthew, we have quite a lot of things going on with what's been happening in the development since the last chapter that we went over. So we're probably going to be having a very exciting conversation about that today.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get right into it. So the Nagoya Basho, day one in the books. Obviously, the highlight is that we have the Shin Yokozuna Ono Sato. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of focus on him and how he's going to do. And obviously now his rivalry with Hoshoryu, who is the other Yokozuna. Other things, there's focus on Ao Nishiki, who is the young Ukrainian. He has not had a losing record at all in his career yet. Obviously, some people in the sumo fandom, foreign sumo fandom, were kind of questioning why he got shafted for promotion to Komosubi in favor of Takayasu retaining his rank. And then a couple of new hopefuls down at the bottom of the division. Kusano, who was a collegiate successful wrestler, and then Fujinokawa, who is the son of Oikari. But so with that being said, with how things went today, Kusano and Fujinokawa faced off, with Kusano getting the victory. Some other highlight matches, including Ura continuing his dominance of Chiyoshima. Takeru Fuji, who we all know from fame as the first person in 100 and over 100 years to have won the Yusho in his Makuuchi debut. He also got a win as well and looked pretty dominant doing that. We have the Iron Man of sumo, Tamawashi, getting a win there. Abi did a flying leap, Henka, which was interesting. Wakataka Kage, in his quest to get to Ozeki, very convincing win over Oho. Kirishima also on his quest to return to Ozeki defeats Wakataka Kage's brother Wakamoto Haru. So that was a few of the matches we had that were and then going into the Ozeki and Yokozuna matches. But Matthew, out of those matches that I mentioned so far, I mean, was there any cool matches that stood out to you as far as how the results went and stuff? Before we get to the Ozeki and Yokozuna, obviously.
Yeah, so Takeru Fuji clearly so here's the thing about his last Basho. His record didn't really reflect how, like, in the end, your record only reflects whether you won or lost. It didn't reflect how close those matches were.
Mm-hmm.
There were probably 5 or 6 of his matches that could have gone either way and were extremely close this last Basho. So it was obviously frustrating for him that they didn't go his way, but he's clearly, obviously with day one, it's hard to tell, but he clearly came in with a vengeance looking to, actually do better this Basho. I was really impressed with that Tamawashi match because, it's like he was definitely monitoring how his, how it went with, I think it was with Meisei, right?
No, Hiradomi.
Yeah, Hiradomi. Yeah, so it's like he was reading it and he was just like, okay, I need to keep my foot in the airborne, and it obviously worked because even though it was originally I think it was originally called for Hiradomi, and then they did a
and then they did a Monori.
And it went to yeah, but the Monoi went to Tamawashi. So it's the example of how he's got that awareness of that's partially why he's been in for so long, is because he's got that awareness to be able to monitor things and be able to win a match. I mean, obviously he hasn't been the most dominant guy, but he's the longest serving.
Well, on top of being one of the longest serving guys, he does have 2 Yusho under his belt, which is, getting just one is, an achievement in and of itself. But the fact that he's been able to do that twice in what I would, not hesitate to call a storied career is truly amazing.
Yeah. And so we didn't mention the fact that both Endo and Daisho are out.
And
Daisho
yes,
was also looking to get
yes, and it's funny
promotion.
because this is actually going to be the first true Kyujo withdrawal from Daisho in his career. What was it? 3 years ago when they had that COVID situation in the Nagoya Basho, then he had to pull out because of an infection that came up at his heya, but the Kyokai did not count COVID withdrawals as not as erasing attendance records. However, this time apparently he had injured himself in between Basho, and he was trying to come back, but unfortunately he could not. Now there's word that he may or may not try to come back mid Basho, but I'm kind of you're at Sekiwake, so you've got a cushion, a well, high enough cushion that you don't have to worry about dropping too significantly. And if you overdo yourself, you could even make it worse in the next Basho. So if he's gonna be sitting out, I don't see why it would be a good idea for him to come back mid Basho.
Yeah, it's disappointing because he's kind of been the perpetual Sekiwake who's been there and has been like trying to get to Ozeki, kind of how Taka Keisho was like the perpetual Ozeki trying to get into Yokozuna, but it is what it is. He's got to take care of himself, and
yeah. And then on the flip side, Endo, which I mean, Endo has been somewhat injury prone during his career, and from what we found out is that he actually had surgery, last week, so right before the Basho on his right knee. Now, what a lot of people are being critical about this situation is that, he's 35 now, and a lot of people are saying, well, why now? Because, in the sumo world, in a lot of cases, wrestlers have tried to avoid corrective surgeries when it came to injuries. We saw that in the case of Kisano Sato, which unfortunately that ended up cutting his career many years short because of that. And Endo has multiple occasions injured himself, and at least, in the old school mindset, they thought that he could heal without getting corrective surgery at those times. So the fact that he's having to do it now, they probably thought that it was going to be really, really bad. And they're talking about that he'll be back for September, but if you're doing that, I probably wouldn't come back. And we can look at, we need to look at the successful, comebacks that they've had. They've had the injuries and gotten surgeries done. One example is Ura, who fell all the way to the Jonidan and came back. Or there's Wakataga Kage, who's on the cusp of reaching the Ozeki rank. But your thoughts on that, Matthew?
Yeah, it is one of those situations where, guys like that and Teruno Fuji, you need, if you want to compete and you need to get the surgery, you're gonna have to compete and get this. You have to get the surgery if you want to be able to compete. the fact of the matter is, you've got a lot of professional athletes who get surgery and then come back. Um, sometimes they're in what's it called, in sports where there's seasons. Sometimes it's easier to just wait until the postseason to get the surgery, but sometimes it's severe enough to where it's like you're out, you're getting the surgery, and hopefully you can come back next season. That's one of the things that is kind of inconvenient for the sport of sumo, because there is no off season. It's 1 month on, 1 month off. And it's unfortunate that it is unfortunate that you've got the situation now where injuries are not taken into consideration. But that's just the name of the game, and it's like if you want to compete and you need to get the surgery, then you need to get the surgery, and you're just gonna have to face the consequences. But
so we'll have to see how that turns out. But yeah, and hopefully these guys come back for the next Basho, or at least they can rest up, and we'll see how they're doing. One thing I also want to mention is that we have two former Ozeki, actually a third former Ozeki. Asano Yama did compete yesterday. He went against Mudoho, and he won by Sukui Nage. And he is literally on the door of coming back into the salaried ranks for the second time after he had been forcefully dropped. He came back, got injured, fell down again. So we'll see if he's going to be able to make it back into the Juryo with this Basho. And then Mitakeumi and Shodai. Mitakeumi had fell down into the Juryo, but he managed an 8-7 at J1 East to come back. Shodai had a bad losing record, dropped himself down to M13, but both of them also got wins. And, actually, they both look pretty dominant for their wins today, I would say.
It was good to see them come back and get those wins in. Obviously, the first day doesn't necessarily dictate how you're gonna do in the Basho, but it is good to like get that momentum going.
Yeah. Anyway, so with that being said, let's get into the Ozeki and Yokozuna. So obviously, Kotozakura against Aonishiki. I would say that this match, Aonishiki got off to a good tachiai. He did manage to drive Kotozakura to the edge. Kotozakura, though, using the Tawara to kind of stable himself. And then he kind of got an overarm or headlock sort of thing. But what was so cool about Aonishiki's execution with that Uchimuso, and he just, waves his arm this way and manages to break Kotozakura's balance. A really cool move, and apparently, he's only one of two people to have, or no, this is only the second time this year that it's been executed, and he's got both of those.
Well, clearly, and I think Aonishiki is one of the kind of move would be a little bit more common as, like a setup to, our, traditional more like double legs or single legs. So clearly he's been able to adjust that in sumo, and to do that against Kotozakura, and in the situation he was, because Kotozakura outweighed him by 100 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, something like Kotozakura is a big guy.
Yeah, he's a big guy, and Aonishiki, obviously Aonishiki was never in danger. I mean, he wasn't in the best position, but he never got past like he would never had his back to the Toada.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where he had a good, and for a young guy, he's got a good awareness, and he was just like, okay, I can't get his Mawashi because he's holding me. So, and then he clearly looked at it and he's just like, oh, pop.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, it's like Kim Tamayama said, though, he's not going to have much time for celebration because he will have Onosato for day 2. And speaking of Onosato, so in the pre-match, right before they were going to start, looks like Onosato kind of had the Shin Yokozuna jitters because he was the one who instigated a mata against Oshoma. But I think that may have also kind of broken Oshoma's concentration because honestly, the Tachiai was a little bit weird, to me. It's looked like Onosato kind of came up straight, and Oshoma did not seem to have any kind of forward momentum. And Onosato was able to dispatch of him. It was, but I guess in a way, I'm glad that Onosato kind of got that out of his system. He's now completed day 1. He's got the win. Obviously, everyone was cheering for him, but it was to me kind of a weird match.
Well, like you said, it was probably the first time Yokozuna jitters, and let's let's and let's also be honest. Even with even it's a lot of people say it's questionable with him doing the college system and getting up from Makushita. So he's risen up very quickly. He's obviously not the youngest guy.
No,
He's not even the youngest Yokozuna. I think doesn't
no.
Takano Hana still hold that record?
Takano Hana still holds that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's but at the same time he's risen relatively quickly in terms of how things go.
Yeah.
But as you pointed out, it was nice for him to get that first Yokozuna win, and it was his first Yokozuna match. So he got it done, and that's all you can really ask for. So.
And then the final match of the day, to close out our review of day 1 of the Basho, Hoshoryu against Takayasu. Now, this was a very big match for Hoshoryu, and the reason why is because Hoshoryu was going into this match with a 2-9 record against Takayasu. Takayasu has typically been dominant of Hoshoryu. In fact, I think Takayasu beat him in the last Basho too. But what was happening in this match is that Hoshoryu went in. He went in quickly, and he also got a Sotogake win. And to me, this match in particular was a statement to everyone. It's a statement for Hoshoryu that he needed to overcome this obstacle of a wrestler, of an opponent he has a losing record against, and also the fact that he's wanting to show that Onosato's not the only Yokozuna in town. It's like he's there too. Final closing thoughts on that, Matthew.
Yeah, it was a statement because he's got that losing record and he's got that chip on that shoulder, and until he unbalances that record to where he's got he's either even or has more wins, it's one of those things where he's kind of gonna always have that chip on his shoulder. And so he went in there and he did his game, and he did what he needed to do, and he won. So that was what was important. So we'll see when we get back together in 7 days how things are going afterwards. Yeah, in the Basho, because we'll have more of a landscape of how things are going.
And with that being said, we're going to go right into One Piece, chapter 1154. Matthew, we have a big one coming up, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, Nelly. There's a lot of stuff talked about on this.
So kind of going into everything, obviously with the last, chapter we talked about, it was the birth of Loki. Obviously with him having the kind of demon the devilish type eyes. Yes, the demon eyes, his mother disowning him. We get into first a couple of things to go over. We get right into the thing about 63 years before the current timeline was when Charlotte Linlin went on a rampage in Elbaf and mortally injured Jorul, who was the counterpart to Jarul.
His brother, I believe.
Yes. Is it his brother? I'll have to go back and look to make sure, but I'll take your word for it in that. But what they're attributing to is that with that, after Loki is born, that there's a lot of these other disasters, natural disasters, and things happening, such as you're having extreme weather, you're having droughts, just
famine.
famine, all these things that normally would not be happening. And, but it looks like Loki has managed to make his way back to the castle, because we saw that it's just that will to live and return to his mother. It just he came back. Now, obviously, with Estrid being in the state that she was in, it looks like she didn't have the energy to throw him out again. you know. But with that being said,
Well,
even though, go ahead.
as we pointed out, Estrid is a very fickle, materialistic woman,
Yes.
and so she was expecting this beautiful baby, and she gets a baby with demon eyes, and it's just like
And horns. Yeah. Obviously, Loki wants to be held by his mother, but the other servants are holding him back. She's going so far as to like saying to gouge his eyes out, which did not happen. We're going into next couple of chapters where the country is continuing to be.
We didn't cover one specific detail about Charlotte Linland that has not been covered up until the chapter, which explains a lot.
Oh, go ahead.
They refer to her as a half giant.
Ah, okay.
All of a sudden, her size makes sense.
Where is that saying?
It says it in there. It calls her a half giant.
It says the girl, a human, half destroyed an entire giant village. Beardfall Jorul was killed by a young girl, the girl, a human, half destroyed
okay. Never mind. I misread it.
Okay.
Oh, so you know what? I know this is kind of a molehill, but something to bring up. So, something that's been pointed out is that the latest volume came out in One Piece, and something to point out is the fact that the weekly manga and Grand Line Review kind of pointed this out. The weekly manga is kind of in a way considered like a first draft, because if there's any corrections that Oda wants to make, it's made in the volume release, and the volume release specifically calls Gunko Saint Gunko of I forget which family. So
okay, well, yeah,
it's verified that she is a
world novel. Well, actually, that makes sense, because we've seen there's been many chapters where, you've seen corrections made.
The biggest being Charlotte Katakuri's. I think initially it was called the Paramecia, and he was called the Logia.
But it was a Paramecia. That's going back into the chapter though, things are getting a lot worse, and now it's like you're having a lot of civil wars now happening between towns or other peoples.
Right, because even though it was, I guess the best way to describe Elbaf is that it was similar to Japan, in that even though they had a monarch, they were divided regionally, and there would be a lot of wars.
And it's getting to the point where a lot of people are trying to go after Hilding because they know that he is Loki's brother. Obviously, Ida is trying to defend him, and Ida was also about to be attacked, but it looks like they were both rescued in the nick of time by Harold.
Yeah, it looks like Harold might have learned, because that fist, it looked like it was probably armament hockey. So it's possible that Harold had.
I mean, maybe
it was just a black glove, but
it looks to me like a black glove.
I'd be willing to say that he might have learned armament hockey, but that's maybe that's just my head
below. I do see a black glove. So
maybe that's just my head canon, but
yeah. But it looks like Harold was on a trip and he managed to, with all the countries that he
Alliances.
visited, yes, all the alliances that he forged, he managed to procure food, to bring back to Elbaf. So
that got them through the famine.
so he gets them through this disaster, at least I would say momentarily. Um, but it looks like before Harold had returned, Estrid had passed away. However, she continued to curse Loki and blame him for what was happening to Elbaf. And by this point, Loki's gotten older, but unfortunately, it's just the way he's been treated has shaped his the way that he is viewing the world.
And that's despite the fact that when Harold finally came back, he was probably one of the few people to show Loki
Yes,
affection.
yes. And I think Harold, probably thought this the best, obviously unaware of the treatment that Loki had received. So he left Loki in the care of his brother-in-law. Of
Who
course,
didn't
they
treat
don't.
him all that well.
No, who did not treat him all that well. On the flip side, though, Hyaldine, Ida is doing her best to raise him and such, and she's running a bar. So it's they're doing okay, it seems. Obviously, Hyaldine is not considered royalty because of the fact that Ida was his mother.
He's
We
not
get
getting the best treatment either because they're constantly calling him a bastard.
right. Now here's an interesting situation. I was trying to wrap my head so much around this, but Harold and Jarul are talking because apparently 56 years ago there was an incident at a reverie. And
Harold tried to get into a reverie. They wouldn't let him in. He tried to sneak in. They found
yeah,
him
they found
out.
him. And
So
but
he was basically trying to at least get observer status, and
right,
yeah, they weren't letting him in.
but and so he actually did get to that council and he was trying to talk. And it sounds like they were going to have him arrested, but there was an incident that happened where there was a murder. Now, and so he was able to get away due to all the chaos happening during this murder that occurred. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. But Jarul brings up something interesting called the Galila Band, which is apparently a group of giant shipwrights. Harold thinks that this is a myth, but Jarul tells him no, they're not. But he got a letter back from them saying that they've all been taken prisoner. And I'm sure that they'll probably go over this more. But I have
And
a
the question,
sneaky suspicion. I have a sneaky suspicion about this because the Galila Band, there happens to be a shipwright company in the first half of the Grand Line.
I was thinking that name kind of sounded familiar. So you think
And I'm
Galila?
wondering if, yes, in a way, maybe this company could have been founded by this Galila band. Not sure. I mean, that's kind of a footnote right now in the annals of One Piece history, but we'll have to see what's going on with that. He also mentions
So the Galila may have morphed into, or at least been found, or been instrumental in founding the Galley Company,
yes.
the
I think
best
they're called
shipwrights.
well, no, I think they're called Galila in the Water 7.
Yeah. Well, either
Either
way, they're
way,
the best
yeah.
shipwrights in the world, and
Yeah.
it's possible that they were founded by giants.
Yeah. So then we go into Jarul talking about an army of giants hidden in ice somewhere. Um, Kind of starting to run short on time, so I'll skip over that. Loki continues to be mocked by his uncle, talking about like the lucky horse being dead. But we see that this kind of morphs. Loki is kind of morphing. He's growing older, so that means that the years are passing by, and he. It almost seems to me like he's just kind of taking in what his uncle is saying, but he's not really. He's set in his ways to not really be caring about what how his uncle is mocking him.
Something I'm wondering, certain types of head wraps, specifically talking about Loki's bandages, certain types of head wraps are kind of one way. Where if you wear something and like those skin tight things, where if you wear it, the light, because of the way that the light comes in, you're actually able to see out in kind of like a screen format, but you can't really see the person inside. So
Right.
I'm wondering if that's what's going on with these bandages with Loki. They're kind of like one of those head hoods where he can see out of them, but you can't really see in them. I'm
Right.
wondering if that's what's going on with.
So, yeah.
But anyways, going back to, we get to Loki kind of acting out and
Yeah, and
wreaking
actually
havoc.
now we see now the whole thing. I'm going back to the beginning of this arc, how Loki is now beating up on his brother, obviously for the different Hilding not being royalty, being a bastard, and Loki. I think in a way this is kind of Loki, the attention that he wants. And he sees that, for example, Gerd and Hilding's
Young
other
Gerd.
right trying to defend him. And I think this just stems back to the fact that Loki just has not received any type of love, and he's upset with that. And we get to a point where he's saying that he can't even die, which
Yeah,
is
it looks like he tries to commit suicide by
yeah,
jumping into the.
because he jumps from up high. I don't know if this is probably the underworld. He sounds like he's done with life, in a way, which kind of brings us to the next page, the final page of this chapter.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so he jumps into the underworld and fails to kill himself, and then a certain pirate crew, one of
yes,
whom is able
and
to take off a mountaintop.
yes, this is where it gets really interesting. Obviously, a lot of these animals are they feel the fear. They feel the fear of what they are up against, and so this pirate starts talking to him. Ah, there we go. Look, it's a giant kid, so this must be Elba. And then we see one pirate who I think we recognize as Golden Lion Shiki. Uh, this one looks positively demonic. We see another person that looks like Edward Newgate. It seems too big, even for a giant. Is he crying? And lo and behold, also we see that so those two, and also it looks like Buckingham Stussy also there. So they are following another pirate. He says that he has two questions for the brat.
And wants
And
two yeses.
yes, you're gonna give two yeses. One, is this Elbaf Land of the Giants, and two, is Harold here? And before we get into who this is, it says that this man, whom Harold met at the Reverie 8 years earlier, killed a Navy headquarters admiral and fled the scene. Now the government has placed a heavy bounty on his head, and the name is Rox D. Zebek.
With a
With
really
a
interesting.
footnote, yes, future captain of the Rocks Pirates, but that's not all. And it says the father of Blackbeard.
And everything is
Everything is now making all the sense in the world.
Yeah, it's he Blackbeard clearly hasn't revealed himself completely, but he's what he's doing is trying to fulfill the legacy of his father. But the fact that it says future captain of the Rocks Pirates means that even now he's got three powerful people who are following him, and he still doesn't have a pirate crew yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you something about Rocks. It's that he's such an influential guy that he's got these, three pirates that are following him, and he's not even a pirate captain yet. But yeah, it definitely does make all the sense in the world now. It's like, oh, Rocks is the father of
Blackbeard.
Teach.
Yeah. Obviously, everyone was saying that Teach was carrying on, Rock's will, just like in a way that Luffy carries on the will of Goldie Roger, or like Sabo carries on the will of Ace, all that stuff, that obviously that is happening, but now it is the connection. It is destiny that, Blackbeard, Teach would be carrying on the will of not just Roxy Zebek, the most infamous pirate in this modern age, but also that he's literally his own father.
Yeah, and that does kind of make an interesting demographic. This is what was similar with what's his called what name this is like similar with how initially Roger was saying the next person who will fulfill the next Joy Boy will be my son, which did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
it is still kind of an interesting demographic, and there was that fan theory that that Dragon might in fact be Rock's son, but I think it's because
I think this kills that theory.
Yeah, not to mention he doesn't look the way the early what's it called?
Yeah, probably
Not
about
shadows.
30 seconds.
The early silhouettes made made him look a little bit more like Dragon, but now this makes him look different, and in a way it actually makes him and Teach look similar, which makes sense because the father. I feel like that was one of those ways in which Oda was maybe trying to throw off a scent.
With that being said, we've got to close out this episode for today. But Matthew, as always, thank you for your very colorful commentary, and to all our viewers, thank you again for tuning in. We will see you all next week.